There were tons of new innovations shown at the Consumer Electronics Show just a few weeks ago, and of course two of the biggest names there were AMD and Intel. Intel revealed some killer processors for desktops and a full range of new processors for laptops, including the fastest laptop processor ever. Could this be the comeback that Intel investors have been hoping for, or is AMD about to dethrone Intel yet again? Your time is valuable, so let's get right into it. A couple weeks ago, Intel surprised everyone by announcing a full range of 13th generation mobile CPUs, and their lineup is actually really impressive. First up, Intel revealed their N-series budget mobile processors, which will replace their previous Pentium and Celeron chips. These bad boys can be found in lightweight Windows notebooks and Chromebooks, and they're designed using the 12th generation Alder Lake architecture. Here's why that matters. Alder Lake is a hybrid architecture that pairs larger, high-performance cores called P-cores with smaller, high-efficiency cores called E-cores. P-cores process heavier workloads but require the most power, while E-cores handle lighter background tasks, which means that they can run at lower clock speeds and consume much less power. These cores all work together thanks to an intelligent scheduler that lives on the chip and can divvy up workloads to push work to the right core for each task. So Intel's Alder Lake architecture was a big step up in terms of overall computing speeds and smoothness, not just for gaming. I'm actually really excited to see this hybrid architecture make it into lower budget devices, because it means that Intel really optimized the process for making these chips. As investors, we want to see Intel go toe-to-toe with AMD and get their chips into more consumer devices. To that end, Intel also revealed their U-series chips, which stands for ultra-low power. These CPUs are designed with power efficiency in mind. They have lower clock speeds, fewer cores, and a lower thermal design power, or TDP. TDP is a measure of a processor's power consumption, and chips with a higher TDP require a larger power supply in desktops and can have a big impact on laptops overheating and their battery life. The U-series chips have a base TDP of 15 watts, and they max out at around 55 watts, which means they're designed for lower-end laptops doing basic functions like browsing the web, emailing, and generating simple documents. Next up is the P-series chips, which will be found in mid to high-end laptops. The TDP of these processors is almost double that of the U-series, with a base of around 28 watts and a max of 64 watts. Then there are the H-series and HX series chips, which will target enthusiasts who want something more comparable to a desktop CPU. These processors are really for gaming and other computationally intensive workloads, so they prioritize bandwidth to all those processor cores, and they support the fastest possible memory. Intel announced a full range of these HX series processors, including the i5, i7, and i9 models. In fact, Intel's new flagship CPU for laptops is the Core i9 13980HX, which comes with 8 P-cores and 16 E-cores. So this is a laptop processor with a whopping 24 cores, the highest ever core count in a laptop CPU. With clock speeds of up to 5.6 GHz, Intel claims that this new processor improves performance by a whopping 49% for multi-threaded workloads. There are a total of 9 variants in the HX line, which will be featured in 60 different laptop designs in 2023 alone, including several with flexible screens like the Samsung Slidable Flex Solo or the Lenovo X1 Fold. Like I said earlier, as an investor who's interested in Intel, this is great to see. And speaking of which, both Intel and AMD both have their earnings calls right around the corner. And if you want a simple and convenient way to follow them, check out moomoo. Moomoo is a one-stop stock market app that helps investors find great investments and execute their strategies. They're also a member of the SIPC, which means your account is secured for up to $500,000. There's a ton of great features that make it super easy to follow earnings during the busy earnings season. For example, they have a great earnings calendar. You can get to this feature by tapping on the Markets button and then clicking on Today, which lets you see every upcoming earnings call. From there, you can listen to live earnings calls right inside the app by tapping the Live button, or rewatch them whenever you want by tapping on the video icon. You can even subscribe to companies to get notifications in advance. If you click on Interpretations, you'll get summaries of earnings reports, transcripts of the Q&As, and opinions from financial experts and analysts all in one convenient place. Now, it's super easy to keep up with earnings, but that's not even the best part. Right now, moomoo is giving away up to 15 free stocks, each valued at up to $2,000. All you have to do is sign up and keep your account above $1,000 for at least 60 days to claim your 15 free stocks. This is a limited time offer, so go try the app using my link in the description below today. While mobile processors were the star of the show, Intel also added 10 new 13th generation desktop processors to their lineup. With so many new impressive processors, it seems that Intel stole the show at CES this year. But there's a problem. To compete with AMD's processors, Intel had to add more cores to their chips. Intel's processor technology uses larger transistors built by an older 10 nanometer process, which means that they draw more power compared to AMD's Zen 4 chips, which are made using TSMC's 5 and 6 nanometer processes. Intel's 13th generation desktop CPUs can use well over 200 watts. That's a ton of power. And while their mobile processors are slightly more efficient, they still drain the battery quickly and cause a lot of heat when all the cores are running at max capacity. So why does this matter for investors? Well, this means that consumers are forced to make a pretty big trade between price, performance, and battery life when choosing from Intel's CPUs for laptops. And anyone buying Intel's latest desktop CPUs might be faced with the same trade. As an investor, I always watch out for when a new product might force consumers to make a bigger investment to support a purchase, like upgrading a power supply or a motherboard to buy a new CPU, especially if that's not also true for the competition. Unfortunately for Intel, desktop consumers might have that option with AMD. AMD packs in much smaller transistors thanks to TSMC, and much smaller transistors means much less power draw for the same performance. AMD announced several impressive new processors at CES, including the Ryzen 7000 X3D line for desktops. What makes these chips so special is their 3D V-cache technology. Thanks to the smaller transistors, memory can be layered directly on top of a CPU without affecting its height. This means that AMD can use the same packaging technology while increasing performance for certain tasks like gaming. We saw this with the Ryzen 7 5800X3D last year, which took the existing 8-core Ryzen 7 5800X and boosted its performance by around 15% by adding this 3D V-cache. This ended up giving AMD's chips a slight edge over Intel's at the time, and it let them brag about being the world's fastest gaming processor. This is a really clever sucker punch that AMD is able to pull between processor generations to keep Intel on their back foot, and one of the reasons I'm always so bullish on AMD over the long term. Now they're using that exact same move with their high-end desktop processors. Their new flagship chip, the Ryzen 9 7950X3D, tops out at 16 cores, a 5.7 GHz boosted clock speed, and 144 megabytes of cache. AMD says that this chip crushes the Intel i9 13900K, performing up to 24% better in games and up to 54% better in other applications. That's a huge jump for both gamers and creators. The rest of the Ryzen 7000 X3D line of chips is looking just as impressive. The 7900 X3D offers 12 cores running at up to 5.6 GHz and 140 megabytes of cache. And on the lower end, the 7800 X3D still has 8 cores, speeds of up to 5 GHz, and 104 megabytes of cache. So these are all pretty beefy chips. But the really important thing here is that these processors have a TDP of just 120 watts, which is anywhere from 40 to 100% less power draw than Intel's line of chips. That said, AMD's 7000 X3D line hits the market in mid-February, so we still need to see if it crushes the benchmarks the same way their previous 3D cache chips have in the past. Just to be clear, Intel has already launched their 13th generation of mobile chips, and the i9 13900KS was released on January 12th, so Intel is currently wearing the performance crown, at least for the moment. But Intel already senses that they may be in trouble, which is why they responded by announcing the new Intel Core i9 13900KS, which is the first ever processor to hit 6 GHz right out of the box. Holy moly, that's fast. But here's the problem. Intel clocked their CPUs higher to compete with AMD on performance. Intel's 13900KS has a massive 320 watt maximum TDP, which is 2 to 3 times more power compared to AMD's X3D chips, which means that Intel may have already lost gamers with smaller power supplies. Remember, you don't want to be the product that forces people to buy other stuff, especially when your competitors don't force that same buying decision. And that's just desktops. The world is going mobile, so how do AMD's laptop chips stack up against Intel's new line? Well, AMD revealed a full suite of mobile chips at CES. They follow a similar naming convention to Intel's, and the HX series is their high-end option for gamers and creators. AMD claims that they've designed the most powerful mobile processor in the world. The 7045 HX series includes 4 separate chips: AMD's 16-core 32-thread Ryzen 9 7945HX. It's impossible. This is impossible to say. ranging from the 8-core Ryzen 5 7645HX to the 16-core Ryzen 9 7945HX, and all 4 of these chips offer much better performance per watt, which means that they're giving people the right balance of functionality and battery life in their laptops. The 7040 series is especially exciting to me because it uses TSMC's 4nm process, supports the latest DDR5 memory, and has 12 integrated RDNA graphics cores. The 7040 series also represents a huge step forward in the world of AI workloads, thanks to AMD's new Ryzen AI architecture, which is called XDNA. XDNA allows the CPU to offload AI work to a dedicated engine built directly on the chip. That makes AMD's 7040 series the first x86 processors to have a dedicated AI component. I really believe this is where the industry is heading. Just like processing instructions and graphics were once done by the same chips before GPUs came along, the same thing is happening now with AI. Think about running ChatGPT and DALL-E and all of the tools that will one day get built on top of them. XDNA is one way to speed up all those services by bringing some of the computing to the edge instead of waiting in line on the cloud. I'll be honest, Intel brought a really impressive lineup to CES, and I'm actually becoming more and more bullish on their future. They're bringing more processors to the market, getting in more devices, and in more price ranges at a faster and faster pace. And Intel's high-end chips should really impress any enthusiast that just wants max performance at any cost. But in my opinion, Intel isn't really reading the room here. More workloads are moving to the cloud. More productivity is going mobile. More hardcore gamers are strapped for cash thanks to inflation and other expenses, and more regular consumers are going back outside. And on top of that, AMD's Ryzen 9 7950X3D chips with that huge 3D V-cache will come out in just a few weeks. And once those CPUs hit the market, they stand a serious chance of dethroning Intel thanks to their power efficiency advantage, especially if they end up being around at the same price point. But what about when it comes to performance on laptops? Right now, that's actually a really hard call. They're both focused more on raw power instead of battery life. The key question here then becomes how many laptop models will feature AMD's CPUs versus Intel's in 2023. Remember that Intel announced that they'll power 60 different laptop models with their flagship HX processors, while AMD has only revealed a handful. So while AMD might take the lead in CPU technology right now, they're losing market share to Intel in both desktops and laptops. Intel gained over 6% of the desktop market during the third quarter of 2022, bringing their total market share up to a whopping 86.1% compared to AMD's 13.9%. The same is true of the laptop market, where Intel gained over 9% for a total of 84.3% compared to AMD's 15.7%. So then why do I think that CES ended up being a huge win for AMD? It really comes down to those transistors. Intel is still lagging behind with their 10nm process, which can't compete with AMD's partnership with TSMC. AMD's 7040 Phoenix series chips are the first mobile CPUs to be built using a 4nm process, which gives them a huge performance boost over Intel's 10nm chips, while also delivering a longer battery life. And while AMD's flagship mobile line of chips doesn't include that extra large 3D V-cache, they don't need it, at least not yet. They already have an industry-leading product and can sucker punch Intel by adding that feature whenever they want. So I expect AMD to be taking market share from Intel over time, which should surprise the stock market given Intel's current dominant position. And before you blast me in the comments, Intel's CEO expects this too. Here's what Pat Gelsinger said just last quarter. We believe that we're still losing share at least through next year. Competition just has too much momentum and we haven't executed well enough. So we expect that bottoming. The business will be growing, but we do expect that there continues to be some share losses. It may not be until we get later into 2025 or 2026 when we start regaining share. Remember, PC enthusiasts are pretty savvy when it comes to spending their money, especially with so much inflation going on. The real mass market winner will always be the company that gives consumers the best performance per dollar without making them buy extra stuff. But before you go investing your hard-earned money into AMD or Intel stock, there's another big risk we need to talk about. And if you want to know what it is, just check out this episode next. And if you feel I've earned it, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. That lets me know to put out more research like this. Either way, thanks for watching, and until next time, this is ticker symbol U. My name is Alex, reminding you that the best investment you can make is in you.